From the studios of KSQD in Santa Cruz, the Dream Journal is a weekly show where we explore the power of nighttime dreams through conversations with dream experts and with listeners like you.
In the house behind, the life you find is something understood. So there's now those vital minutes.
Today's music created fresh for you today by Rick Cleffel. Our guest today is Robert Moss, a dream teacher, a prolific author, and the founder of the School of Active Dreaming. A survivor of 3 near-death experiences, Moss's life choices, big and small, have been guided by synchronicities, both inner and outer. We'll be talking about dreaming, shamanism, imagination, and much, much more. I am your host, Katherine Bell of Experiential Dreamwork, and welcome to the Dream Journal. A dream can be meaningful, even if you don't know what it means. I'm going to start with a dream moment I had recently. I found I was being pulled in one direction. There was like a group of people playing music, and I was being excluded from them. This is terrible. I could not join them. And there's another group of people playing music, and I desperately go follow them, and I can't catch up to them. But then I look around and I notice that bit by bit, I'm in this grove of a beautiful moonlit trees and grasses. And like, that's what I remember most from the dream now. I've been working with this moment of just being in the grove. Maybe I don't have to pursue places where they don't want me, or I don't have to pursue something that's not here for me now. I can just be in the grove with the magical moonlight. So that's what I've been exploring. Robert Moss, so good to have you on the show.
Catherine, I want to be back in that grove. Have you gone back into the dream? I want to be there.
Absolutely.
And I want to experience the dream. You're about experiential dream work. That's more important to me than the ideas that you're coming up with. Those are good ideas. I think I'd entertain those ideas too. Do I really need to waste energy and time on this group or that? Right. No, I want the grove. I want to be in the grove. I want to be dreaming in the grove. So I'm going to attempt lucid dream reentry and go right back inside and spend some delicious quality time there.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
And even if I can't find it in a lucid dream, I can find it in my active imagination and waking life. And
absolutely,
it took me a while to look at this dream in that way, because at first I looked at this dream as, oh no, I'm being rejected again. Like that was the focus. But then I realized that there was this ending that was beautiful, and I could just stay with that ending with a beautiful grove and the moonlight shining in, and I don't have to worry about these other things pulling me in different directions.
Absolutely. Trees are often wiser than people, and to connect with one's own sacred grove is a very big thing to do.
I agree entirely. Well, Robert, let me introduce you. A formal introduction. Robert Moss has been a dream traveler since doctors pronounced him dead in a hospital in Tasmania when he was 3 years old. From his experiences in many worlds, he created his School of Active Dreaming, an original synthesis of modern dreamwork, shamanic journeying, and creative imagination. He has lived in upstate New York since he received a message from a red-tailed hawk under an old white oak. Talk about synchronicity and communicating with trees. And you can find Robert Moss at mossdreams.com. And he also has an extremely active Substack, mossdreams.substack.com. And the books, Conscious Dreaming, Dreamways of the Iroquois, Dreamers of the Books of the Dead, Sidewalk Oracles, Mysterious Realities, and most recently, Growing Big Dreams. Just Google Robert Moss, you will find a lot of information. So, Robert, yes, we're here in the grove. Let's imagine ourselves here in the grove as we have our conversation, because I think it's a beautiful place to be.
Yes, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing except for that oak tree and for the hawk that gave voice to the whole scene. Shall I tell that story briefly?
Yeah, that'd be wonderful.
I've been a dreamer all my life, as you mentioned. Thank you for the lovely introduction. But in midlife, having been very successful in certain areas, I felt I have to live more quietly. I want to get to know this land where I'm living. I mean, I'm an Aussie. Here I am in New York City, or actually out on Long Island, but still under the shadow of New York City. And I drive upstate and I'm looking at some properties and some land, and I had some money in those days. I'm thinking maybe I could move up here, but I'm not sure. I don't know people. There's an old rundown farmhouse. Behind the farmhouse is an old white oak that has survived the lightning. So I sit down under the oak, I lean against the oak that my ancestors knew, and a red-tailed hawk starts spiraling down, circling round and around, squalling at me in a language I might understand, but I don't speak hawk, and drops a feather between my legs.
Oh, wow.
So you talk about synchronicity or coincidence as a secret handshake from the universe. This was an unsecret wing brush. And it wasn't the only reason that I bought the farm, but I did buy the farm.
In a good way. Not the
And
farm.
on the farm, I started dreaming with the hawk. The hawk would come in that liminal state between sleep and awake, where I do a lot of my best work in that hypnagogic zone. I have done that all my life. It's an area that is not talked enough about in the sleep and dream community, but for me, it's been prime time, the hypnagogic zone. One night, I found myself flying out of my body, quite naturally, nothing unusual about it, flying over Lake Champlain to the north of where we were living. And I'm drawn into a cabin in the woods, and I notice on the flight I'm wearing the wings of a red-tailed hawk. That's how I'm getting around. That's where I met a native woman who lived a long time ago, who became a teacher of dreaming and what dreaming can be for me, and a Rondiwano, a woman of power. I had
You
to
say
learn
her name again?
Well, it's a generic term. A Rondiwano is an Iroquois term for a woman of power, like a shaman, like a healer, a Rondiwano. And I had to learn her language because she would only speak to me in her language, which is archaic Mohawk with some Huron Wendat in it. And so this was a turning point in my life, and it came about because I was under that tree, and the tree and the hawk gave me the message. And then the time came a few years later to move, and Dreams and Synchronicity prepared me for the move, and it was all put together. The woman who bought the property was a great conservator for the land. I told her to talk to the oak. She talked to the oak. She put horses on the land. It was all beautiful. And we're leaving, and the farmhouse has been broom swept, but I have to go back in for the third time. We're ready to go. We're leaving the place. We've sold the property. I go back in, and in the family room, we had added to the old farmhouse. In the big fireplace we had added, behind the fire screen is a rustling, and I removed the fire screen, and there's a young hawk, a fledgling hawk, in the hearth. So my last action on the land that I purchased because of a hawk is to carry the young hawk outside next to my heart and watch it fly into the branches of the oak tree where the hawk found me several years before. So live long enough and you might get this sort of looping pattern of synchronicity and dreams, and they interweave. And that's how I like to live.
Yeah. Talk about synchronicity coming around again. And I wanted to go back to this idea about hypnagogia. Like, this is the state between waking and sleep. And then again, it happens again in the hypnopompia in the morning, when between sleep and waking. But there's a state where we're kind of in the REM state, but we're still awake. Is that, of course, that's the technical way of saying it.
It could come at many points during the night. It could come at the onset of sleep when you're not asleep yet. It could come any number of times during the night, depending on how often you wake or half wake from sleep. I've always been a skimpy sleeper in terms of the length of time I spend asleep. I'm rarely asleep for more than 2 or 3 hours. I'm usually in some other state, and often I manage something approximating continuity of consciousness. In other words, I maintain some level of awareness all night long, and it's generally to be rested, not always. So it might come in the in-between states. You get up, you go to the loo, go to the bathroom, you're lying in bed. If you're not cussing yourself because you're not asleep, you might find that you could slip into a state of relaxed attention and images will rise and fall, or you might have an agenda. But then that hypnopompic state, before you get out of bed in the morning, when you've come out of your main sleep cycle, that is the most fertile of all, and it's recognized as such in so many different traditions. I mean, for Iamblichus, the Neoplatonist philosopher and theurgist, it was God time. It was the time when the deities, when the spirits, when the daimons were most likely to talk to you in that state before you rise, when the soul is still somewhat detached from the body, because of its night rambles. I mean, that's the common understanding in ancient and indigenous societies. That some part of you, call it soul, call it the dream self, travels during sleep. It's coming back, but it's not fully back, so it's still connected with a larger reality, but it's close enough to the ordinary functionings of the cerebrum for you to hold on to what's happening. So I found all of these stages, I mean, incredibly fertile, this kind of liminal dreaming, incredibly fertile all of my life. My most important conversations take place in this state. And some are spiritual conversations, some are just lovely, lovely talks. I had a long talk for what seemed like 4 hours with a physician who I respect this morning. It probably took actually, it may have been similar. It may have been about 4 hours of dream time in several phases. This morning, we had the most wonderful conversation, an intelligent conversation with a literate person who brings science and other complementary knowledge to it. It was really just great. And most of that was in the hypnagogic state. And I didn't initiate it. It started spontaneously in a dream. But I was delighted to continue. That's the other thing about the hypnagogic state. It is a wonderful state in which to continue a dream, which might have been a sleep dream. You've woken from it or half woken from it. You're still connected. Why not go on with it? You might be enjoying it. There might be something that is problematic. Why not try to resolve it while you're still in that space connected with the dream?
That's interesting. I was thinking about the whole hypnopompic state when you're waking up. And then often as I'm waking up, if there's some kind of a dream I'm trying to reel back in, I'll kind of start repeating the dream to myself. And I often find that the dream kind of changes in that state. And and I've never known whether that's okay. Is that's acceptable? Is it okay to because the dream morphs sometimes, and I've always thought, oh, that's wrong. I got to stay with exactly what it was when I'm asleep. But from what you're saying, that there can be like a creative communication and conversation here with the subconscious self or these guides during that time. So maybe I should let it change. And
why would we want to regard dreams as museum pieces that would be preserved behind glass in whatever version we initially remember? Whatever we remember is already a production. I mean, our story editor has already come to work. I mean, we're probably never going to have the absolutely raw primal experience of the dream because we're already shaping it into story. We're making intentions to remember, as you were saying. That's already beginning to imprint it and encode it and change it in some ways. Why resist the tendency of the imagination to do what it will? Because it's all about imagination at the end of the day. I mean, our dreams are material for the imagination. They're products related to the imagination. So I've never been of the view that we just have to hold to the original state of a dream. Nonetheless, there might be information in the dream that we want to preserve and access. So if there are details in the dream, particularly if it relates to ordinary reality like precognition, like seeing people and things at a distance, you want to get the details straight. So that's different from the question of whether you're allowed to change the story, to change the plot line in another sense.
Well, how do we know whether this is one of those cases that we need to keep as close to the original dream as possible? Intuition.
Well, I think one of the things that my friends who are dream workers in this country still don't take seriously enough is that dreams we are forever seeing glimpses of what will happen in ordinary life. It's a survival function, and people will discuss, well, if this is so, how does it happen? Because I'm a natural shamanic type, I would say it happens because part of you travels ahead of you, scouting the roads ahead. And it shows you things that will happen, but more interestingly, it shows you things that may or may not happen, depending on whether you can read the information correctly, check it, and apply it in an intelligent way. I mean, I wouldn't be talking to you in my understanding of life if I hadn't avoided death on the road 3 times by glimpsing a possible death scenario on the road 3 times, checking the information, taking appropriate action to avoid, for example, the collision with an 18-wheeler coming down the hill at twice the legal speed limit at that particular intersection in that town on that day, 2 weeks after the dream. So, I know, as somebody who has recorded dreams, as you have done for a very long time, but has always kept this in mind, that I want to ask of any dream, could this happen in some way in the future, literally or symbolically?
Right.
As someone who's done that, I have recorded hundreds of dreams, large and small, about events large and small that resulted in the future. But as I say, for me, the most interesting thing is not that we might see events, future events before they happen, is that our dreams might give us the option to make choices about whether we want to allow this scenario to develop or can choose something better for ourselves or for others. And I notice that we can, at least in my experience.
Right. And that would certainly be the adaptive function of precognitive dreams, is if they allow us to make a different choice, if they allow us to prevent the disaster.
Absolutely, in which
that
case it's no longer a precognitive dream if we're going to think about the terms. It's an early warning or early opportunity dream. Precognition is when you see something and it happens as you saw it. You may not have understood what you saw until it happens. I mean, that happens all the time. People see things in dreams or intuitive flashes, and then it happens, but they didn't understand because they were at a certain angle of vision and they couldn't apply it to a real situation, or they're actually sometimes in the perspective of a different person looking at a situation. Psychic dreamers often find themselves looking at things through a different perspective other than their usual one, that of another person, family member, friend sometimes. So, all of this is worth thinking about. For me, precognition is such a routine phenomenon that unless it involves, matters of great urgency or importance to me or people I care about, I don't bother about it very much. But I keep reminding people who don't think about it, hey, this is going on in your dreams. Pay attention. Because I know many dream workers who still claim that they haven't seen the future. And I say, really? Just look again. Ask of any and all material, is it possible this could play out in the future? And I bet you're going to find something that will confirm that. When you've confirmed that, of course, then you do the interesting stuff, which we were just talking about. Once you confirm you can see things before they happen, then you can think about changing things that you see of the possible future that you don't like, because it's all about probability.
It's not always possible. And we've had two different guests talking about precognition. Well, more than that, but this what comes to mind is Iroquois was on a little while ago, and Paul Callis, who both talked about precognitive dreams. And I'll tell you, Robert, I have had very few precognitive dreams, just as I've had very few lucid dreams. It's just not a realm I tend to go to. And yet recently I had a precognitive experience, which is that I had a dream which seemed to come out of the blue, where I was wounded. I was like a zombie. I couldn't get any help. I was in a lot of pain, and I was kicked out of the hospital, and I just had this really intense pain, and I couldn't relate it to anything in waking life. And about a week later, I got this big emotional shock, and it knocked me really hard, and I felt like a zombie, and and I went back and I saw it in my dream journal. I'm like, oh, this was that's the feeling. And so maybe somehow that was preparing me for that, because I was able to stay with the feeling and not eject it and not blame it on somebody else, but just to stay with the feeling, which is kind of...
We have different styles of dreaming, and symbolism takes different forms for different people. And I'm actually a symbolist about everything, although I notice that sometimes we need to be more literalist about a certain kind of dream than we are. I mean, I read Eric Wargo's book. He's very determinist. He tends to think, okay, we see the future, but it's set. I don't find that fun enough. I mean, I don't want to go through life thinking that the future is all set. I want to play with possibilities. I want to prance around. One of the things that you can do, and anybody watching or listening can do in terms of checking your own ability to see the future, is this. If you've been keeping a dream journal for a while, open it at random to old entries and ask, amongst other things, maybe as a first question, if you're thinking about this, did this dream show me something that happened later? Let me give you a quick example. I mean, I do this all the time. I do bibliomancy with my old journals. And often it's a starter dough for my writing. I'll write a poem or a story or work something into a presentation. But I'm always interested to see whether the dreamer is anticipating something from the future. So many years ago, when I still kept handwritten and typed entries in old ringback binders, I opened one of these things when I'm about to rush off to a retreat center where I'd never taught before. And there's a 3-page, single-spaced typed dream report that flutters out of the binder. And I read the first line. It says, a bald man with a big beard tells me there are 78 people enrolled for your workshop. Oh, I look at the rest, it's pretty bizarre and surreal. Well, I put the 3-page report in my pocket. I drive to the center. There's a man at the desk in a hat with a big beard.
Uh,
I say, take off your hat, please. This is the way I am. He's bald. He's got a big beard. I say, how many people have we got? We've got 78 enrolled. So this is already a precognitive hit. But that's not the interesting thing, Catherine.
yeah.
All the stuff, all the bizarre stuff is a preview of dreams and personal crises, other things that will develop over a 3-day workshop with 78 people in the round where I have no assistant. We're meeting in a barn with bats flying back and forth overhead. It's a crazy setup. And situations going to develop which could have blown the workshop apart. But my dream is my counselor. And the dream was recorded 11 months earlier before I'd ever heard of this retreat center or they had invited me.
Mm.
So that's an example. I mean, that's a rather complicated one, perhaps, but it's a delightful one in terms of, the utility, the rewards for doing this. But so you have your own dream journal random, and on the very simple, practical level, just ask yourself, am I seeing something here in this dream that I recorded 11 months or 11 years ago that has manifested since? I mean, that might be a way of getting a handle on the extent to which you might be previewing events in waking life in your dreams before they
That's
happen.
very interesting. So in some ways we want to kind of preserve the dream as we remember it, and yet also feel free to play with it. So like we kind of want both. Like we were talking about the hypnagogic state or pompic state when you're waking up, that you have the dream, but it's morphing as you work with it. So we kind of want to be able to play with it. Like I remember the workshop in Esalen that you led, I was at in the 90s. I think it was the mid 90s or something, and you did this shamanic drumming thing, which was amazing. And just starting with my own imagination to go into the inner realms and follow my imagination was really powerful. It wasn't just like thinking about things. I saw images and,
Yes, I mean you could compare I call it dream reentry. I mean you could compare it to Jung's active imagination, but it's active imagination in a high octane version, because in the workshops we use shamanic drumming. So here you are, you've got your portal. What do you want to know? What would you further like to experience? Where is this dream inviting you to go? That might be an interesting way to think about the grove of trees. And along the way, perhaps you check out what's going on with the two groups that weren't friendly to you. Do they matter or not? Who are they anyway? How do they relate? So you might have subsidiary intention. But if you're the dream you open with is my dream, I want to get to the grove and I want to communicate with the trees themselves, the spirit of the grove. Who knows what might emerge? A hamadryad, as a big spirit of the trees might emerge. I might find that there's a tree there that is my cosmic elevator that can take me to the 3 tiers of the shaman's universe, for example. I might find that I can simply rest and recuperate and dream inside the world, the heartwood of a tree, So we use shamanic drumming in the workshops to synchronize the experience of the whole group, to fuel and focus the journey so that distraction is driven away. At home, I very rarely use drumming for myself. I just got into the habit of flicking the switch or keeping the switch on, because often, I don't know about you, but often as I surface from a dream, that it was not initially a lucid dream, I've become quite lucid inside the dream, and I don't fall out of it. I'm still connected to it, so I can continue. And I might want to continue because I want to hold on to the information and get some more. I might want to continue because I'm having a really good time and I want to go on with it. I mean, last night was simply this absolutely wonderful conversation, best kind of conversation with someone who's literate and brings knowledge of books and science and scholarship in the world beyond your own. That kind of really good, challenging and beautiful conversation. You might be having a romance on a tropical island. You'd like to continue that for a bit longer. Why not? Or you've been menaced or challenged by something that you might even be in danger of leaving it as a broken dream, a nightmare. A nightmare in my lexicon is a scary dream you ran away from. You left it unfinished. It's not just a bad dream. It's one that you
unfinished dream.
You're too scared. It's an unfinished dream. And if you're in that kind of situation, if you can pull yourself together, if you can brave up, your best remedy is going to be to stay with the dream and try to resolve things on their own ground. And
even if it's scary.
Yes, if you have the ability to call in allies and resources to help you, but maybe you're not ready to do that in that moment. Maybe you'll have to try it again. But re-entering a dream is the best solution, the best cure, the best healing for nightmares long term. Whether you can do it right away or you need to gather your strength and gather your resources, because you so often find that what is challenging in a dream is, in some sense, your own power. And if you can face your fear and go beyond it, you can claim that power and let it claim you.
And it's a powerful thing, because so many people have nightmares and they therefore block out their dreams, and yet that nightmare is knocking on the door with something important. And like you said, it's usually your power, something that you can really.
Can I tell you a story about this, about somebody who stopped dreaming because she was scared by a nightmare, and then what happened? I think actually the reason for dream drought, the absence of dream in a lot of people in our society, is they were scared by something in their dreams, maybe very early on. And in one sense or another, trying to close the door on their dreams. So I was teaching in France, teach a lot near Montpellier in southern France. And we had a French girl there who'd done all sorts of spiritual practice, this, that, and the other, yoga, kung fu, meditation, shamanism. But she was really ticked off in the workshop because people were coming down to breakfast and sharing dreams at the breakfast table. And she said, I don't have any dreams. I don't dream. I do these other things, but all you people are there talking about dreams over your coffee and baguette, and I don't have any. I said, really? What's the last dream you remember? She looked at me and said, I was 9 years old.
Oh.
I dreamed that a stranger offered me some chocolate, and I love chocolate, but I couldn't see clearly. And my parents said, don't take candy from strangers. And I came out of the dream screaming, Maman, Papa, and they came and said, oh, it's only a dream, go back to sleep. So I prayed, good Catholic girl. I prayed to Mary and Jesus and all the saints and angels, no more dreams. And for 30 years,
No more dreams.
no dreams.
Wow.
So I said, okay, how'd you like to go back inside your dream? Open the curtain. Apparently the hand was coming from behind a curtain. See what's going on. She starts shaking. She knows about shamanic journeying, but this is still with her and it scares her. She says, will you come with me? Will you come with me? I said, all right, we'll form a little pod of dreamers. We'll form a little group of 4. We'll back you up, but you'll do the work. So I'm drumming and everybody's in little groups and they're gathering around dreamers and they're supporting their dreamer going back in her dream. She goes back inside. She opens the curtain. And the stranger has angelic features and angelic luminosity. And my God, my God. And then the features resolve. It's a man she remembers. He was her father's best friend. And she loved this man. He was like a second father. She says, it was you. Why'd you scare me? He says, oh, Cherie, you've forgotten. I was killed in that car crash. My face was mutilated. I couldn't let you look at it. I didn't want to scare you, but I wanted to give you something sweet. So I did the best I could. Next morning, residential retreat, she's first at the breakfast table. She tells us 6 dreams. Vroom, 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 vroom. Years, vroom, vroom, vroom. It's like there are fireflies in the room, aspects of her soul, her dreaming self that have come back.
That's
so
amazing.
If you bring back the dreams, you can bring back more of soul, and the two things are connected.
Robert, this is wonderful. This is Robert Moss. I'm so happy to have you on the show. You can touch with Robert at mossdreams.com. We've got a lot more to go after the show. After the break here, I have a question from an Instagram follower. And I also want to ask Robert Moss about a Carl Jung quote, which I think is fascinating, about a dream is a living thing. And so I'm going to ask Robert about that. So... next week, our guest will be Dr. Satya Bayak, who will be talking about Carl Jung, the Red Book, and the search for meaning in early adulthood, a time she calls quarter life. The Dream Journal is broadcast live from the KSQD studios in Santa Cruz and co-broadcast live in San Jose by KCXU. We are podcast everywhere on the Monday after the show. Full-length videos of the conversation can be found on Spotify and also on my YouTube page at Experiential Dreamwork. We will be right back. This is the Dream Journal, and I am Katherine Bell of Experiential Dreamwork. Thank you so much for your generous ratings and reviews for the pod and for sharing episodes on your social media. To help us spread interest in dreaming, please follow us by looking for hashtag the Dream Journal and at Experiential Dreamwork on your favorite social media. But most importantly, consider telling your friends about the show. It's a chance for you to start talking about dreaming with them. You might just find your next dream sharing buddy. Our guest today is the fabulous Robert Moss. His webpage is mossdreams.com, and we are talking about shamanism, hypnagogia, active imagination, and so much more. So I'm hearing these fabulous stories. Robert, these are just really enjoying these stories. And I wanted to start with a quote that you sent me when we first started negotiating about this podcast, picking the date and all that. You sent me this quote from Carl Jung, and I wanted to hear what your take on this quote is. I had not heard this one before. Carl Jung says, it's great. Let me read the whole quote again.
Right.
I read it before the break, but let me go read it again. A dream lives as a living thing, a living situation, not the rustling of dry papers. It produces while we are talking about it. I'm a list apart. It's an animal with feelers and many umbilical cords. I love the idea of the multiple umbilical cords. So yeah, what is that like?
So he said this in a seminar in Zurich in about 1927. An American called Jackson Stewart Lincoln was there. He wrote a book called The Dream in Primitive Cultures, a title we wouldn't use today, but the book is very important. Anyway, so this American psychologist, anthropologist is there, and he hears Jung say this, and the context is they'd be discussing a dream of a bull. Uh-huh. And then all this bull stuff starts rolling in. I mean, someone writes to Jung in this period about a bullfight in Mexico. Mm-hmm. People are having visions of bulls. A fellow comes in with a painting of a bull, an Egyptian bull with the sun between its horns, a sort of Egyptian bull god. And it's multiplying to such an extent that Jung comes up with the statement, you see, a dream is not a text. It's not the dry rustling of paper. It is an animal. It's putting out feelers and suckers as we speak. And I love this because it's my experience, and maybe it's other people's experience from time to time too, that dreams do spill over into the world. It's not just that they affect our emotions or our feelings, or might shape our thinking on a certain day. It's as if they do have their own life, as Jung suggested, and they interact with things across the veil. And so things are happening differently. I mean, for example, I dream that I'm back in World War II. I mean, I'm often back in World War II as a Brit, actually, as a Royal Air Force pilot. If I were straightforward reincarnationist, I'd say something about that. But I'm not straightforward. I have a connection. So I'm back in Britain yet again. And I'm with my girlfriend at the time, who is a registered British nurse, a military nurse. It's World War II. And I'm thinking about this, and I'm saying, what any sane person will say from time to time, to what extent is this a historical fantasy that I'm cooking up? To what extent am I really there? And in front of my house is a car I've never seen before, and the license plate identifies it's the car of a registered nurse. Oh. Never saw it before or since on that street. I mean, tiny in itself. But I'm thinking at that moment about the nurse in my dream. And there is the car of a registered nurse at the door of my house. So, sometimes, so it's very interesting when dreams spill into the world like this. Another way that dreams spill is that our dream symbols get around, don't we? We dream of something and someone else turns out to be dreaming something very similar. Sometimes the whole setup is so extremely similar that we wonder whether we're in the same dreams, having an interactive or mutual dream, which often seems to happen between people who are connected or people who are on the same wavelength or people who love each other or work together. So these ways in which dreaming is an interactive and interdimensional game are very interesting.
Right, that workshop that I did with you and Esselin, the last night of the workshop, you said let's all set an intention to meet at this canyon, which was a picture over the fireplace in the room where we were meeting. I don't know if you remember this, but it was like this beautiful red, this kind of Southwest canyon, and let's all meet there and let's see if we have a co-dream. And all night long I was like, I gotta get there, I gotta meet there, and I did show up, and I saw a couple other people, and the people who I that I did see had dreams about it the next morning, because we all compared notes the next morning, and some people did have the dream, some people didn't. And it was like a kind of an intentional co-dreaming experiment, because we didn't have relationships with each other except for the workshop, which we've been doing this work all this week, but we didn't have personal relationships, and yet we were able to intentionally meet up in this place.
Yeah, we went traveling. Dream destination travel is what I sometimes call it. I set these experiments up quite often in workshops, including the online workshops that I currently do. And the results are sometimes spectacular, and sometimes there'll be more complicated assignments. I don't know that I gave very many specific instructions. We just showed some wonderful photographs of this valley in Utah and the petroglyphs and so on, and we agreed to go. But for example, one group recently, we decided to do Serpent Mound in Ohio and see how it was used, why it was constructed like that, what were the rituals like, etc. Another occasion, we chose the old temple of Athena at Priene in Anatolia, where only I had ever been in the group. We see the cults of many different religions celebrated at this site. We wanted to see how things worked at a certain period, like 400 BCE. And the results that came back made group logs that run to scores of pages with all sorts of details, with clues that can be checked out with some research. So we're doing dream archaeology in both of those examples, getting information which then, with some scholarship and some research, we could expand and in some cases confirm. So not only were we perhaps confirming the possibility of interactive dreaming, meeting up on the inner planes or the transpersonal planes, we were confirming the possibility of getting information not reasonably available under ordinary circumstances that is actionable, that can lead to research and discoveries that you would not otherwise be able to make.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of what they call remote viewing, which is something that people with psychic abilities can view what's happening in other places in the world. But I was a friend of Russell Targ many years ago, who was one of the people who was hired by the CIA to investigate this as a possibility for espionage. And the problem is they found that it worked extremely well, but the issue is that they would be looking at other places in the world at different times, maybe 50 years in the past. And so was not very useful. And so they gave up on it, not because it didn't work, but because they couldn't pinpoint it in time, which kind of brings us back to the precognitive thing. But this is a waking life thing, but it also happens, as you're saying, in dreaming life, that you can go back to previous times and find out what really did happen in some of those ancient cultures.
Well, as I use the word dreaming, I'm not thinking primarily about what happens during sleep. I mean, most people in popular culture, including lots of researchers and dream workers, think of dreaming as a sleep phenomenon. But for me, dreaming is about waking up. If you go to Egypt, where they did a lot of dreaming, though we don't have enough records, the word for dream is the one we transliterate as reswit, R-S-W-T. It means an awakening. So in the language of Egypt is the understanding that dreaming might be waking up. Waking up to what? Waking up to the deeper reality, waking up to dimensions beyond the physical. So that for me is what dreaming is about. And I consider what goes on in the hypnagogic state to be dreaming. I consider what's going on when I'm drumming for a shamanic journey to be dreaming. I consider many forms of meditation to be dreaming, whether it's horizontal meditation, lying in bed in a relaxed state, or walking around and paying attention to synchronicity and symbols in the world around you. That's a kind of walking meditation. And I was talking to a friend who's a Tibetan Buddhist and a prominent teacher. He said, you're absolutely right. That's not exactly the language we use, but you're right. What you do in terms of looking for synchronicity around you is walking meditation. And we ask people to be alert to noticing how the world is like a dream. The world is like illusion. The world is like a dream. Reality is illusion. Illusion is reality. So dreaming for me has many aspects and many modes.
I feel like you're giving me permission. I feel like tremendous permission now that to embrace all these things as dreams.
Yes. And I think we need to be porous. We need to have loose boundaries when it comes to what is the dream and what is the imagination around it. Because I mean, in the language we borrowed from the East, thanks to Henri Corbin, who went and learnt about the Sufis in Iran, in medieval Iran, the imaginal realm is where a lot of the interesting stuff happens. And in the very phrase is the idea there's a realm of true imagination beyond the physical, where the imagination is the engineer, the architect, the creator, where we have contact with all sorts of interesting beings, including the departed, including wise teachers. There are palaces, there are pleasure domes, there are places of higher education, and so on. And we go there in dreams, and we can go there intentionally in intentional meditational journeys. But it's all about the imagination. The imagination, the great faculty of soul from which great things emerge.
So Robert, I just like, let's take it another step further. Like, what about death? Do you think that there's some state of dreaming that involves as we let go of these physical bodies, and like
Death is but a dream.
Right.
That was the title that someone who did a lot of scientific work on death recently gave. It's correct.
Christopher
People ask me, I mean, it's a very simple question, very simple people have asked me over the years, can you die in your dreams? I said, I wouldn't want to die any other way. I love to go into the right dream and carry on. The Lakota say the path of the soul after death is the path of the soul in dreams. What would this mean? It means, and I mean, this might be heresy to a lot of Western thinkers in modern society, it means that soul, or something we can call soul, or some aspect of the self, the language will be debated. The dream self, some part of the self or soul, travels beyond the body without any difficulty in dreams. It's not about setting up an OBE. You do it anyway, whether you believe it or not, whether you remember or not. Some of your dreams, including the most interesting ones, are ones in which a part of you has left your physical body and your bedroom, left your physical brain, and gone somewhere and made a visit. Or you've received a visitation from someone else who's not confined to a physical body. When I first started talking about my dream encounters with the Arondewano, the Iroquois woman of power, with the elder of the Six Nations of the Longhouse, which is the Iroquois people, he said to me very matter-of-factly, oh, you made some visits and you received some visitations. This is the old understanding, the oldest understanding of dreams on the planet. Dreaming is traveling. What is traveling? It's a part of you, which in English we might call soul. We can never really agree on what the soul is. Virginia Woolf said, you start writing about the soul, it disappears. I mean, you can't do it. So these are slippery words. But the idea that an essential part of us, essential part of our identity and energy, travels in dreams is very widespread. And if you buy into any part of that, then you understand why dreaming would be good preparation for dying, because you get used to being out there. And you also get familiar with places where you might live after your death. And you also encounter the departed. Many of us have dreamed of the departed. And the almost universal discovery is, hey, the dead are alive in our dreams. Isn't that the almost universal discovery?
Yeah.
Sometimes they have to jump up and down and say, look, I'm alive, I'm alive. Sometimes we're skeptical and won't initially believe them. But we make that discovery, we get at home in an element beyond the physical world. So dreaming is, you want to prepare for death? Use your dreams. And of course, that's at the center of Tibetan yoga. I mean, that's what the dream yoga is all about. It's about preparing for dying correctly, dying the best possible way. Actually, one of the lamas who showed a real sense of humor when he said this, said, dreamers, if you're a frequent flyer as a dreamer, you get an upgrade. You can fly first class. Lads.
Is that the lucid class when you get into the first? Right.
Actually, I'm launching a new immense online series of classes in October called Psychopomp Training. It's all about applying the techniques of shamanic dreaming as I do it to death, dying, and the afterlife. So this is one of my favorite subjects, as you probably know.
Fabulous. Yeah, no, this is something that's close to my heart as well. And Jean Van Bronckhorst on the show a little while ago talked about helping people die, like having lucid dreams and finding people who are ready to die and helping them let go. And like as to be a psychopomp leading people beyond to their beyond.
I think I've had Jean on my own show. I appreciate her understanding of these things. I have actually found that if you can just get someone who is approaching death to remember and talk about their dreams, you've already accomplished something wonderful. No process is necessarily involved. Just to get them open to the fact that they are dreaming. They may not have thought about this, may not have remembered or talked about dreams most of a lifetime. It already brings about, it engineers a tremendous change, and helps get them ready.
Well, it's interesting. My mom, who is 93, is she says, she always says when I talk about my dream stuff I'm doing with dreams, she's like, I don't remember any dreams. And yet she's gotten into the state lately where she's like, life feels like a dream. She's like, am I dreaming? This feels like a dream. And so maybe she's accessing it through the waking state.
Well, I think as we get older, and hopefully she hasn't succumbed to any of those conditions that people give nasty names to, like dementia and so on. But with or without that, as we get older, I think that part of us is more likely to be out and about in the sense of traveling beyond the body a little bit and exploring what things are like. And you might not remember it from sleep dreams, but in a sense, you might be doing it to some extent all the time.
Mhm.
Uh, Getting ready, I mean, getting used to being somewhere beyond the body. I found that with elderly people who've not remembered dreams and might be interested or might not, one of the things that often brings about a breakthrough is to start talking to them about an animal that they loved.
Oh,
I'm thinking of one elderly lady, for example, who just would get so excited when I asked her, tell me again about her beloved corgi dog.
mm.
And then after we just have conversations like that over a cup of tea. This Robert, I dreamed of him. He's in my dream last night, and he showed me this, and he took me to this lovely garden, and so on.
Oh,
So whether that's the guide putting on a mask or whether that's a projection of wishful thinking, we can go to that conversation. We don't really need to. It's working.
it's
She's
working.
dreaming
Yeah.
now because it's been made safe and
Mhm.
pleasant, and it involves a beloved furry
Yeah.
friend.
I
You
love
know.
that. Well, I have one more question here, Robert, which is from Instagram. Was about one of your Substack posts called "Don't Let Me Sleep Too Long." And I went and looked at the post, and it was very much a poem. It was like you have sometimes you have poetry and then you have prose, and
I think it
but
is
this
a poem. Yes,
yeah. So
I'm
this
known
person
to commit poetry.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, so this person's just asking, like, says Robert seems to imply that there are concerns about sleeping or staying in state too long, which is interesting hearing that you yourself are a short sleeper. Uh, and yeah, so I don't wonder if you have any comments on that, or like, is there like I've been finally sleeping longer. I'm actually been able to make it to 7 o'clock some mornings, which has been great. And I don't know. What do you think about this?
Well, first of all, there is a widespread tradition, very notable in indigenous societies. Do not wake the sleeper. Don't wake the sleeper. And
Yeah.
you read the Scandinavian epics, read the Icelandic epics, and say again and again. Even if someone's having a horrible night, they're screaming, they're ranting. In those Icelandic sagas, don't wake him up. Don't wake him up. Let him go through it all. Let him enjoy it all. I mean, that's said
He's
ironically.
not done.
Someone is screaming and having a horrible dream, but don't wake them up, because the understanding there is that if you rouse someone from sleep, their soul or whatever part of them is traveling might not be able to get back to the body right away and could even be lost. So that's a tradition in ancient and indigenous societies, but that's not what I'm writing about.
Okay.
I'm writing about the fact that for me, if I spend a long time in sleep, I often come back feeling depleted and I understand that this is because part of me has been traveling in a subtle energy body, perhaps even part of the etheric body, the heavier aspect of the subtle vehicle, and is subject to travel fatigue. And that is subject to the bruises and things that will happen to your astral body when you come back. You see, we don't have an agreed upon, to put it mildly, spiritual anatomy for these things in the West. And they do in the East, they do in indigenous traditions. They used to have it in ancient days. The Neoplatonists certainly had one. But people don't seem to have clarity on the fact that, yes, we have a physical body. Yes, we have a brain or mind. We also have subtle vehicles of consciousness, so that when we go dreaming, typically we are not disembodied thought forms. When we go dreaming or leave our body in a shamanic journey or in a trance state or something else like that, we are typically traveling in a subtle body,
Mhm.
and it can experience pleasure and pain, sometimes more intensely than the physical, and it can bear the marks and also carry the fatigue of what it experiences, particularly if you're dreaming of flying over large bodies of water, as I often do because I'm from Australia and the UK. I mean, I was born in Australia and lived in the UK. I'm often in Australia or the UK at night. And guess what?
A lot of water
I'm
between those
not
two
for too
places.
long. And after too long, I feel all those symptoms of jet lag, which I manage better in physical reality than coming back from a dream expedition. So that's what I was writing about there.
Interesting.
That's from my own personal experience and my own personal requirements. So I noticed that though I've always typically been a polyphasic sleeper, in other words, several cycles of sleep rather than one long period, it's also good for me not to actually be out for too long.
Well, thank you, Robert Moss. This has been a fabulous conversation. Mossdreams.com is how to get in touch with you. And do you want to say anything about your upcoming offerings? You've mentioned you have some things launching in October and some other offerings on your webpage.
Yes, I mean, we're about to add a bunch of new online events to mossdreams.com. The big thing to mention is that my Dream Teacher training, which has been running for a long time now, which people do for all sorts of reasons. I mean, it's really the summit of what I offer. We start the cycle of my Dream Teacher trainings again in January. There are prerequisites. You need to have completed at least one course with me beforehand. But if you're really called to this, I mean, and if you're called to the cause, which I think that Katherine and I share, of helping to midwife a dreaming society in our world, in our time, you might want to look at that. But there'll be some new online courses, including the new Psychopomp training, which will run for 18 weeks, that will be posted soon.
Very, very exciting. So do you have any final encouragements or thoughts you'd like to share with our listeners?
Well, let's do more of this. Let's do more of it. Let's do more of it, and let's remember that waking life is also a dream, and that the waking world will speak to us in a language of pop-up symbols and signs and revelations if we pay attention. Let's remember that, and let's remember also that in a certain sense the only time is now. From this moment of now, if you're willing to apply it, you might be able to travel in time, especially if you're a dreamer, to past, present, or parallel times, look at what's going on there, and even influence things for the better. I mean, that's a game to play that is worth learning. Science says we live in the many worlds, an infinite number of parallel universes. Suppose you have doppelgangers who made different choices in other worlds right now. What would it mean if you could consciously look in on them and maybe borrow some lessons and gifts from their life, maybe even meet them and make a deal to share more with each other right now? This is the kind of game that I encourage people to play and give them techniques to play with.
Thank you. I love this, Robert. This is really amazing conversation. Thanks so much for being on the show. And I'll hold you to that. I'll have you back and we'll have a lot more to talk about. There's always more.
Dream host Katherine, thank you for all that you're doing to bring the dreaming to people. So many people are hungry for this and don't know what is available. So
Yeah.
thank you for being an ambassador for the dreaming.
You're so welcome. All right. Take care, Robert. So thank you all for listening. The Dream Journal is produced at the KSQD studios in Santa Cruz. We are live every Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific at ksqd.org. I am Katherine Bell. You can contact me at experientialdreamwork.com or at Katherine@ksqd.org, Katherine with a K. Keep up with the shows on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and especially on YouTube by following at Experiential Dreamwork and hashtag The Dream Journal. I'd like to thank Rick Kleffel, music creator, Eric Nelson, phones and engineer, audio editing by Suki Wessling. Intro and outro pieces are both by Mood Science. And tomorrow morning when you wake up, take a minute to write down your dream and bring it to the next Dream Journal.
Thank you.